Faloma Luhk was born on February 9, 2001, in a small village known as Teo, which was located on Saipan Island, a part of the Northern Mariana Islands. On February 13, 2002, her sister Melina Quitugua Luhk would be born. Their father, a former police officer, had left the Mariana Islands for work in Micronesia and never had much contact with his family. Meanwhile, their mother lived and worked in Guam before eventually moving to the United States. Even though both of their parents weren't even in the same region as them, they were still loved by their family and lived with their grandparents since 2007. The girl's aunts, uncles and cousins also played a part in raising her. The two also found themselves easily making many friends at school, which they attended in a neighboring town. On May 25, 2011, the two sisters woke up that morning and got ready for school. Conveniently, their bus stop, a small pavilion, was situated only a few 100 meters from their home, so it wasn't that long of a walk. The two sat at the bus stop and waited. At 3:30 p.m. once school was out, the two should have been home relatively quickly due to the bus stop's proximity to their home. But they were nowhere to be seen. Their grandparents grew concerned. They managed to flag down the school bus before it drove too far and spoke with the driver. The driver didn't remember if the two had boarded, but all of the children still aboard told their grandparents that neither had seen any of the two at all. After leaving the bus, they rushed home to call their school. According to the school, none of them attended any of their classes that day. The two had arrived at the bus stop at 6:10 a.m. and school ended at 3:30 p.m. Since the school didn't sound the alarm or even call Faloma and Melina's guardians to ask where they were, the two had been missing for over 10 to 11 hours before the alarm was sounded. When that phone call ended, they wasted no time in heading to the police. The police, fortunately, took the case seriously from the very beginning. An island-wide alert was issued for the two, and their family began placing missing person flyers across the local area and showed them to passers-by at the Thursday market. Meanwhile, the police began conducting door-to-door searches and inquiries. When the flyers got no results, they began hanging banners above the roadways, which would be much harder to miss. The police also read Faloma's school journal/diary, but nothing was written in it that might provide some clues for her disappearance. Melina's journal was missing. Officers were also sent to the bus stop itself. Nothing at the pavilion was out of place nor left behind. The police couldn't find any signs of a struggle nor any signs that the two had run away, such as footprints leading away from the bus stop. Whatever had happened to them, they wouldn't get any answers at the bus stop. But that didn't stop the police from concluding foul play must be involved. They investigated the case as an abduction. From their interviews, the police learned that Faloma had been wearing jeans and a white blouse while Melina was wearing jeans and a light green shirt with a butterfly design. The police were quick to add this to their bulletins. The police also learned something that should make finding them easy as well. Their backpacks, which they had also been wearing, had their names and home phone number written on the straps. Melina's backpack was Dora the Explorer themed, while Faloma's was dark purple and also had Quitugua Luhk written on the straps. Faloma was 5 feet 1 inch tall and weighing 90 pounds, while Melina was 4 foot tall and weighed 65 pounds. Melina also had a birthmark on her left cheek. The police also tracked down the children who were on the school bus that morning and spoke with them. According to them, Faloma and Melina were not waiting at the bus stop when they arrived. The two were last seen at 6:10 a.m. sitting on a cement slab at the bus stop. The school bus arrived at 6:30. Whatever caused their disappearance took place within that 20-minute time frame. Unfortunately, while there were many houses nearby, the dense vegetation likely obscured what happened to the sisters from any potential witnesses. The last avenue pursued by the local police on their own was to search the landfill. But being as small a department as they were, they didn't get far in the fairly difficult and strenuous process that is searching through a landfill. While the Northern Mariana Islands aren't a state, they are a Commonwealth territory of the United States. That meant that the local police could not only contact federal U.S. law enforcement agencies for assistance, but they could assume jurisdiction and deploy their resources in full. On May 27th, after one day without having anything to show for it, the local police decided to make the call. Soon agents from the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and the U.S. Marshal Service were dispatched to the Northern Mariana Islands at the local police's request. Some investigators from Homeland Security and the DA also joined in. Now that all three agencies were involved, no expense was spared in finding the two girls. A search party consisting of various investigators and 500 volunteers were searching every nook and cranny the island had to offer. Meanwhile, underwater divers were deployed to search the beaches encircling Saipan. A helicopter from the U.S. Navy and a C-130 plane from the U.S. Air Force were flown over the dense jungles. And speaking of those jungles, a tracking dog, trained by law enforcement to specifically search in a thick jungle environment, was flown in from Hawaii to aid in the search. The local police even waived their quarantine guidelines so the dog could get to searching as soon as possible. When it came to suspects, where else to start but with their biological parents? Her mother was ruled out pretty quickly as she wasn't even on the island and flew in from Guam upon hearing the news. Meanwhile, an FBI agent from Hawaii was flown to Pohnpei, Micronesia to question their father. The agent returned from Micronesia with their father also ruled out as a suspect. The alerts and bulletins were also issued to other islands such as Guam, Hawaii, and even as far as Washington State and Oregon. Over 400 separate areas had been thoroughly looked over, twice for all 400, and 100 leads were followed up on. They also searched abandoned homes and structures and obtained permission to search some private residences. On June 8, the FBI then went to the northern tip of Saipan to visit the Marpi landfill themselves. Over 62 personnel, consisting of FBI agents, police and firefighters, began sifting through all the garbage and waste deposited at the landfill to try and find any trace of the two. Over 30,000 cubic feet of trash had been excavated, but this endeavor was still met with failure. They called off searching the landfill on June 11. The FBI, though, said they were happy with this result. They believed there was a decent chance the two might be alive, and failing to find their remains at the landfill only emboldened this belief. When all was said and done, their efforts made the search for Faloma and Malina the largest, most expensive and most extensive missing persons investigation in the history of the Northern Mariana Islands. They also did have some witnesses to question. Every Wednesday the garbage men and their trucks passed by the pavilion. May 25, 2011, just so happened to be a Wednesday. On that day they stopped at the pavilion at 5:45 a.m., which meant they didn't see the two, but that's not to say they had nothing to say. Exactly 1 week before and 1 week before that, on May 18th and May 11th, the two garbage men saw the same gray Nissan pickup truck in the immediate area. On May 11th in particular, the truck had been parked in front of the Santa Lourdes Shrine, near the bus stop. Its headlights were on and it seemed to be lying in wait. Then on May 18th they saw the truck driving toward the pavilion. They merely thought the truck belonged to a local resident and didn't think much of it. The police spoke to other garbage men to see if they saw this truck on their own routes, but they all said they didn't. The garbage men in Saipan would take their time when collecting the trash so they could look around for any trace of the sisters. The shrine would also come into focus once more regarding another suspect. On May 6th, a witness saw an unfamiliar man parked in front of the shrine near the bus stop. When witnesses approached the man, he said he was waiting for somebody and then left in a hurry. He was driving a white four-door car with heavily tinted windows. The front driver's side of the vehicle was heavily damaged. As for the man himself, he was described as a Pacific Islander who was approximately 30 years of age and had short hair and a nondescript birthmark on his cheek. A sketch of this man was created and soon released to the press. In July, the police tracked this man down and he once more told his story that he had been waiting for someone that day. On August 14th, human remains, some with some flesh still attached, were found at a vacant lot next to an abandoned shack in Cagman. The discovery came after a dog returned home to its owner's backyard with one of the leg bones in its mouth. The dog's owners then searched the immediate area and found the rest of the body. The remains were estimated to have been there for 3 to 4 weeks. Also found were pieces of clothing, a young girl's underwear and a pair of zoris. The presence of the clothing was said to be incidental as it was too old and big to belong to Faloma or Malina. The bones themselves were severed, but that was the result of animals scattering them and there were no signs that they had been buried. Many feared that these belonged to the missing girls. These fears didn't last long as a dental examination conducted on the lower jaw was indicative of an elderly male around 70 years old. DNA testing revealed that they belonged to Faloma and Melina's great-granduncle, 72-year-old Ricardo Muna Quitugua, who went missing after getting lost while out on a walk. Ricardo's ID card would later be found at the scene. He was described as a loner who lived alone and was last seen 2 weeks prior. His routine consisted of walking from his house to the CYC store to buy the newspaper. He would then proceed to Lau Lau Beach, sit under a tree and read the news before walking back to his home. The police have never publicly stated what Ricardo's cause of death was, but his family don't believe it was natural. According to them, he seemed healthy and was strong for his age, so for them, natural causes were completely out of the question. They believed that perhaps he was attacked so that he could be robbed of his $674 monthly pension. The next suspect was one a little closer to home. Alan Santos Uggan was a local firefighter and related to the family via his wife. Alan refused to submit to a polygraph, and after his interview, he sold his 2003 Toyota Camry and resigned from the fire department to move to Washington state. Since polygraphs are unreliable, his refusing to take one wasn't overtly incriminating. His car was also searched. Nothing of note was found in his vehicle, and there were no signs of it having been cleaned either. He also had an excuse for why he moved to the continental United States. That was where the rest of his family lived, and he wished to reunite with them. Unfortunately, this was the last lead they had at the time. The case gradually went cold and the search was called off. Alan might have escaped scrutiny from the media and public if not for what he did next. On May 8, 2012, Alan attacked the wife and child with a chair. The same wife and child that he left the Northern Mariana Islands to be with. For this, he was held in the King County Jail in Washington. Local police charged him with domestic violence and assault, with the court setting his bail at $500,000. He was handed a no-contact order which he violated on numerous occasions. He was also slapped with additional felony charges for assault. He has never been arrested for anything concerning Faloma and Melina's disappearance. In 2014, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children produced some age-progressed photos of the two girls, which were then circulated across Saipan and even in Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington state. The FBI also publicized a photo captured by a CCTV camera of a girl at a Saipan grocery store who looked like one of the two. Eventually, the girl in this photo was found, and she wasn't either of the missing sisters. Then in February 2018, the FBI found themselves another suspect. They landed on a man named Joseph Acosta Crisostomo. Joseph had a lengthy criminal record and was currently serving a life sentence for raping and murdering a Filipino bartender in 2012. He pretended to be the taxi she had called to lure him into his vehicle. He then proceeded to leave her body in the bathroom of an abandoned and run-down mall. He was also the suspect in the murder of two Chinese shopkeepers in 1995 and the murder of a Chinese woman whose body washed ashore on a beach in 2006. According to witnesses, she was last seen getting into a taxi that later turned out to be fraudulent. There's much more to say, but I plan on doing a complete write-up on Joseph Acosta Crisostomo at some point in the future. His family owned a home in Coblerville, a small village on the southern tip of Saipan. The FBI believed the bodies of Faloma and Melina may have been buried on the property. A judge felt their suspicions held water and signed a warrant to let them begin the search. On February 17, 2018, FBI agents and the local police spent hours digging up the yard with a backhoe but came up empty-handed. Joseph's attorney later pointed out that he was in jail at the time of their disappearance and wasn't released until December 17, 2011. But nonetheless, the FBI still had something compelling enough for the excavation to be approved in spite of that relatively solid alibi. Joseph's family tried taking legal action against the FBI through the courts over this search. In early March 2018, the police dug up and searched a World War II-era septic tank at an abandoned lot in Cagman. This followed after an anonymous tip which said their bodies had been buried in the disused septic tank. This was the last development this case saw. This case is still considered open, and the FBI is offering a reward of $25,000 for anyone with information. Those with information are also encouraged to contact the FBI field office in the Northern Mariana Islands at this number 670-322-6934. If Faloma and Melina are still alive, which the police and FBI have yet to completely rule out and in fact remain hopeful is the case, they would be 24 and 23 years old respectively. Thank you for watching our story. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.